I've moved through so many places across America just looking for help. It's been a long road, bouncing from city to city, and I'm just exhausted.
The pandemic took everything from us. My job was the first to go, then the apartment. It just feels like there's no way out.
I lost my family. It was hard.
Note: not all images in this video were accurately recorded at the location being discussed. To help viewers gain a clearer, more objective, and comprehensive understanding of the impact of social problems, we may use images from other areas with similar conditions and circumstances. If you live in or are present in Los Angeles, please share your observations and opinions in the comments section. These contributions will help us improve and update the content in future videos. Thank you very much. Vancouver, a city of mountains, ocean, and cultural diversity, has long been considered one of Canada's most livable places. But behind that magnificent image lies a contrasting, increasingly evident social challenge: homelessness. According to the 2025 point-in-time homeless count in Greater Vancouver, compiled by the Homelessness Services Association of BC, the Greater Vancouver area recorded 5,232 people experiencing homelessness on the night of the 2025 census. This represents an increase of approximately 9% compared to 2023, when the number recorded was 4,821. It is important to emphasize that the point-in-time count is not the total number of homeless people for the entire year, but rather a snapshot of a single night, used across Canada to track changing trends over time. And the trend in Vancouver shows that the pressure is increasing. One area frequently mentioned when discussing homelessness is Downtown Eastside. This area has a high density of social services and is home to many people facing housing and income instability. According to urban analyses and reputable local news reports, Downtown Eastside clearly reflects the persistent challenges of affordable housing, as the cost of living rises faster than many can afford it. Furthermore, reports from global news indicate that the number of people without access to shelter in Greater Vancouver increased significantly in the 2025 inventory, with 1,893 people recorded in this group. These figures highlight a thought-provoking reality. Even in a city rich in resources and services like Vancouver, maintaining stable housing remains a challenge for many. Homelessness here isn't just a story of a specific group, but a result of housing pressures, the cost of living, and socioeconomic shifts affecting an increasing number of people across the population. However, data isn't just for illustrating the problem. It also helps to ask questions for the future. What is driving these numbers up? And what approaches can create sustainable change? In the following sections, we will delve deeper into the causes, daily realities, and the efforts underway in Vancouver to find solutions to one of the city's greatest social challenges. When discussing homelessness in Vancouver, Downtown Eastside is often the most frequently mentioned area. This is a downtown area with a high concentration of social services, supportive housing, and community organizations. It also best reflects the persistent challenges of housing and urban living conditions. According to field observations and reputable news reports from CBC and the Vancouver Sun, Many homeless people in Downtown Eastside resort to setting up makeshift tents, utilizing sidewalks, vacant lots, or public spaces for overnight shelter. This isn't because they want to live this way, but because alternative options are extremely limited. It's important to understand that homelessness in Downtown Eastside isn't confined to one location. Many are forced to move frequently due to regulations regarding the use of public spaces, or simply to find a less risky temporary resting place. Can you imagine starting each day with the decision, where am I going to live today? According to the Homelessness Services Association of BC's Point in Time 2025 report, Greater Vancouver recorded 5,232 people experiencing homelessness overnight. This data doesn't isolate Downtown Eastside, but urban researchers agree that this area accounts for a significant proportion of Vancouver's overall population. This shows that housing pressure exists not only in the suburbs, but also right in the heart of the city. Regarding public health, Vancouver Coastal Health has repeatedly warned that unstable living conditions, lack of access to basic sanitation, and regular medical services can increase health risks for those living outside the formal housing system. This is not an individual issue, but a systemic challenge directly related to urban planning and access to suitable housing. Faced with this reality, the City of Vancouver and community organizations have implemented numerous measures to alleviate immediate pressure. According to publicly available information from the City of Vancouver and its partner organizations, these efforts include increasing temporary shelter capacity, expanding community outreach services, and connecting homeless individuals with more appropriate support programs. However, reports also acknowledge that shelter is only a temporary solution and cannot replace stable, long-term housing. What happens if a city has adequate services, but still lacks suitable living spaces for low-income individuals? The reality of living in Downtown Eastside clearly demonstrates one thing. Homelessness is not a far-off problem, but a part of modern urban life that requires a patient, long-term, and data-driven approach. And to understand why these pressures persist, we need to delve into the bigger question. What causes have pushed Vancouver to this point, and what is the current system lacking? To understand why homelessness in Vancouver continues to rise, we need to look at the specific numbers, as the data clearly shows significant pressure on the housing system. The most consistently confirmed cause is the housing affordability crisis. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Vancouver consistently ranks among the most expensive housing markets in Canada. The Vancouver CMA rental market report shows that the rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Vancouver has exceeded 2,100 Canadian dollars per month in many central areas. The vacancy rate for 2024 to 2025 remains below 1%, indicating extremely limited supply. This means that even if someone has a job, finding an affordable apartment remains a significant challenge. Meanwhile, according to Statistics Canada, the median income of renters in Metro Vancouver has not increased proportionally with housing costs over the same period. As a result, more and more households are spending over 30%, even more than 50% of their income on rent, a level considered a serious housing burden. The second reason is the persistent shortage of affordable and non-profit housing. According to a policy analysis by the BC Nonprofit Housing Association, British Columbia, particularly the Metro Vancouver area, is lacking tens of thousands of nonprofit housing units to meet current and future needs. BCNPHA emphasizes that the pace of affordable housing construction is much slower than the rate of increase in demand, and high land and construction costs create many obstacles for nonprofit projects. This leaves the system without sufficient safety buffers for those on the brink of housing instability. The third reason is the pressure of urbanization and population growth. According to City of Vancouver planning data, the city continues to attract new immigrants, students, and young workers. Meanwhile, limited land availability and lengthy development processes prevent the housing supply from expanding quickly enough to keep up with demand. As a result, the market becomes more competitive, and those with low or unstable incomes are the first to be excluded from the market. Beyond economic factors, health and social agencies also note a clear link between persistent housing instability and mental health difficulties. According to Vancouver Coastal Health, the lack of stable housing reduces access to regular health care and makes it difficult for many to maintain long-term employment. All these factors create a vicious cycle. High housing costs, financial burden, instability, increasingly low chances of re-entering the housing market. These figures make one thing very clear. Homelessness in Vancouver is not a sudden phenomenon, but the cumulative result of years of insufficient investment in affordable, long-term housing. And so, after looking directly at the data, the next question is no longer why, but what specific solutions is Vancouver implementing, and are they large enough to reverse this trend?
Physical and mental.
For those without stable housing in Vancouver, the impact extends beyond simply lacking a roof over their heads. It's clearly evident in the measurable consequences for their physical and mental health. Vancouver is one of the cities with the highest rainfall in Canada. According to climate data from Environment and Climate Change Canada, the city experiences over 160 rainy days per year, with long, wet, and cold winters. According to public reports from the City of Vancouver, prolonged cold and rainy weather increases the risk of health deterioration for those who spend time outdoors, especially when there is no stable shelter for recovery. From a medical perspective, Vancouver Coastal Health indicates that those without stable housing have a significantly higher rate of emergency medical use compared to the general population, due to limited access to preventative care and ongoing treatment. An analysis report cited by CBC News, based on regional health data, shows that people facing housing instability are significantly more likely to be hospitalized than those with stable housing, especially during adverse weather conditions. Mental health. The Public Health Agency of Canada notes that prolonged housing instability is clearly linked to feelings of social isolation, sustained stress, and a diminished ability to maintain supportive relationships. These factors don't appear suddenly, but accumulate over time as a person lives in prolonged uncertainty. In this context, community organizations play a crucial role in mitigating the immediate impact. In Vancouver, Covenant House Vancouver announces that each year it provides tens of thousands of meals, along with temporary shelter and support services, to homeless youth. At the government level, the City of Vancouver, in partnership with BC Housing, opens shelters and winter refuges annually during periods of extreme weather. According to the city, these shelters help reduce immediate health risks, but are not considered a long-term solution. All this data clearly shows one thing. Homelessness is not just a housing issue, but a measurable public health problem. Therefore, the next crucial question is, how can these temporary measures be replaced with more stable, sustainable solutions?
Efforts of the government.
Having clearly identified the current situation and its systemic causes, the next crucial step is to consider: how is Vancouver responding? At the city level, the City of Vancouver is implementing the Housing Vancouver Strategy, a long-term housing strategy aimed at expanding supply and reducing pressure on those with limited access to housing. According to publicly available documents, this strategy aims to promote the development of tens of thousands of new homes across various segments, with a priority on social housing and subsidized housing for low-income and vulnerable groups. Instead of allocating budget in a single year, the city utilizes multi-year capital plans, combining local budgets, public land funds, and collaborating with the provincial and federal governments to create a stable and long-term investment in housing. At the provincial level, BC Housing plays a central role in implementing social housing programs and operating the shelter system. According to BC Housing's annual reports, the province continues to invest in long-term supportive housing, expanding seasonal shelter capacity, especially during periods of extreme weather. BC Housing also clearly emphasizes in its policy documents that shelters are only a temporary solution, and the main goal remains to shift people from short-term solutions to more stable and sustainable housing. Throughout this process, the role of data is indispensable. The Homelessness Services Association of BC acts as the provincial point-in-time homeless count coordinator. Instead of offering direct solutions, HSABC provides foundational data for government levels to monitor trends over time, identify high-pressure areas, and adjust budget allocations, shelters, and supportive housing based on factual evidence. At the federal level, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation continues to play a role in analyzing the housing market and providing policy warnings. CMHC reports are not intended to offer specific local solutions, but rather to help cities like Vancouver position their problems within the national context, thereby adjusting their strategies to better suit reality. When all these efforts are put together, one thing becomes clear: Vancouver is not standing still in the face of homelessness. The city, the province, and professional organizations are working together on a system based on planning, budgeting, and data. However, even the official documents acknowledge that the scale of current demand still exceeds the speed of system intervention, and sustainable change requires time, continuous monitoring, and broader community involvement. And from here, the story begins to shift. After looking at what the system is doing, limitations still exist. Now, the question is no longer just for the government, but is beginning to shift to us. What role can communities, individuals, and society play in ensuring that these policies truly bring about change in people's lives?
Individual action and community voice.
After examining the entire picture, from the current situation and causes to the efforts being implemented, one thing becomes clear. Homelessness in Vancouver is not a problem for which no one is responsible, but it cannot be solved by one side alone. The city, provincial, and professional organizations have been investing budgets, planning, and data to gradually adjust the system. But at the same time, official documents also show that the scale of the current challenge exceeds the system's capacity for rapid intervention. And it is in this gap that the role of the community and individuals becomes particularly important. Individual actions don't necessarily have to be grand. They could be supporting local community organizations, volunteering, even for just a few hours each month, or simply sharing accurate information, so that this issue is not misunderstood or reduced to prejudice. To all of you watching this video, Please help us by highlighting helpful campaigns your local area has undertaken in the comments below, or simply by following and sharing this post. These small actions, when combined, help maintain a frontline support network where the most pressing needs are addressed first. But individual action is not enough without a collective voice. We also have a role to play in monitoring how housing budgets are used, paying attention to development plans in our neighborhoods, and questioning policies when they don't deliver the expected results. The data from the Homelessness Services Association of BC and reports from the City of Vancouver are not just for storage, but for public oversight and dialogue. Community voices, based on data and understanding, can create positive pressure for housing strategies to be adjusted in a timely and appropriate manner. A livable city is measured not only by its landscape, but also by how it treats its most vulnerable. Vancouver is in a difficult transitional phase. There are no simple solutions, no instant results. But it's not a dead end either. What we've seen shows that systems are working, data is being used, and opportunities to create change remain open. The ultimate question is no longer who is right, who is wrong, but where will we, as individuals and as a community, choose to stand in this process? Thank you for following this entire journey. And if possible, please start with a small action today to help build a Vancouver where no one is left behind.